Hi poetry lovers, welcome to my channel Bella Poetry Presents. Today we will discuss another English romantic poet John Clare. John Clare was the son of a farm laborer. He became known for his celebration of the English countryside and his sorrows at its disruption. His work underwent major re-evaluation in the late 20th century. He is now seen as a major 19th century poet. His biographer, Jonathan Bate, called Clare the greatest laboring class poet that England has ever produced. No one has ever written more powerfully of nature, of a rural childhood, and of the alienated and unstable self. Clare was born in Helpston, England on July 13, 1793. He was the elder of twins, but his twin sister died in infancy. Clare became an agricultural laborer while he was still a child, but attended school in Glinton Church until the age of 12. In his early adult years, Clare became a potboy in the Blue Bell public house and fell in love with Mary Joyce. But her father, a prosperous farmer, forbade them to meet. Later, Clare was a gardener at Burghley House. He enlisted in the militia, he tried camp life with the gypsies, and worked in Pickworth, Rutland as a lime burner in 1817. In the following year, he was obliged to accept parish relief. Malnutrition stemming from childhood may have been the main factor behind his 5-foot stature and contributed to his poor physical health in later life. Clare had bought a copy of John Thomson's The Seasons and began to write poems and sonnets. In an attempt to hold off his parents' eviction from their home, Clare offered his poems to a local bookseller, Edward Drury, who sent them to his cousin John Taylor of the Taylor and Hassey firm, which had published the work of John Keats. Taylor published Clare's poems, descriptions of rural life and scenery, in 1820. The book was highly praised, and the next year his Village Minstrel and other poems appeared. On March 16, 1820, Clare married Martha Turner. Her name, he called her Patty. She was a milkmaid, and he married her in the church of St. Peter and St. Paul in Great Casterton. An annuity of 15 guineas from the Marquis of Exeter, in whose service he had been, was supplemented by subscription, so that Clare gained £45 a year, a sum far beyond what he had ever earned. Soon, however, his income became insufficient, and in 1823 he was nearly penniless. The Shepherd's Calendar, which he published in 1827, met with little success. As he worked again in the fields, his health temporarily improved because he was in the sun and he was in the fresh air, but he soon became again seriously ill. Clare was constantly torn between the worlds of literary London and his often illiterate neighbors, between a need to write poetry and a need for money to feed and clothe his children. His health began to suffer, and he had bouts of depression, which worsened when his 6th child was born in 1830, and his poetry sold less well. In 1832, his friends and London patrons clubbed together to move the big family to a larger cottage, with a small holding in the village of Northborough. However, he only felt alienated there. Clare's last work, The Rural Muse, published in 1835, was noticed favorably by Christopher North and other reviewers, but its sales were not enough to support his wife and now 7 children. Clare's mental health began to deteriorate. His alcohol consumption steadily increased, along with dissatisfaction with his own identity and more erratic behavior. He was becoming a burden to Patty, his wife, and his family, and in July 1837, on the recommendation of his publishing friend John Taylor, Clare went of his own volition to Dr. Matthew Allen's private asylum, High Beach, near Loughton in Epping Forest. Taylor had assured Clare that he would receive the best medical care. Clare was reported as being full of very strange delusions. He believed himself to be a prize fighter and that he had 2 wives, Patty and Mary, the first girl that he was in love with. He started to claim that he was Lord Byron. During his early asylum years in High Beach, Essex, from 1837 to 1841, Clare rewrote poems and sonnets by Lord Byron. Childe Harold, his version of Byron's Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, became a lament for past love that was lost, and Don Juan, a poem, a misogynist, sexualized Ran, redolent of an aging dandy. Clare also took credit for Shakespeare's plays, claiming to be him. "I am John Clare now," the poet told the newspaper edition. "But formerly I was Byron and Shakespeare." In July 1841, Clare absconded from the asylum in Essex and walked home 80 miles, believing he was to meet his first love, Mary Joyce, to whom he was convinced he was married. He did not believe her family when they told him that she had died accidentally 3 years earlier in a house fire. He remained free, mostly at home in Northborough, for the 5 months following, but eventually Patty called the doctors. Between Christmas and New Year 1841, Clare was committed to Northampton General Lunatic Asylum. His maintenance at the asylum was paid by Earl Fitzwilliam, but at the ordinary rate for poor people, which means that his care was very mediocre at that time. He remained there for the rest of his life under the humane regime of Thomas Pritchard, who encouraged and helped him to write. There he wrote possibly his most famous poem, I Am, which I will read to you later. It was in this poetry that Clare developed a very distinctive voice and unmistakable intensity and vibrance, such as the later pictures of Van Gogh possessed. John Clare died of a stroke on May 20th, 1864, in his 71st year. His remains were returned to Helpston for burial in St. Botolph's churchyard, where he had expressed a wish to be buried. So I will read to you a couple of his poems. The first one is called I Am. I am, yet what I am who cares or knows? My friends forsake me like a memory lost. I am the self-consumer of my woes. They rise and vanish, an oblivious host, shadows of life whose very soul is lost. And yet I am, I live, though I am tossed into the nothingness of scorn and noise, into the living sea of waking dream, where there is neither sense of life nor joys, but the huge shipwreck of my own esteem, and all that's dear, even those I love the best, are strange, nay, they're stranger than the rest. I long for scenes where man has never trod, for scenes where woman never smiled or wept, there to abide with my Creator God, and sleep as I in childhood sweetly slept, full of high thoughts unborn. So let me lie, the grass below, above the vaulted sky. Beautiful poem. And then another poem that he was known for, nature poems that he wrote so lovingly. The poem is called Evening Primrose by John Clare. When once the sun sinks in the west and dewdrops pearl the evening's breast, almost as pale as moonbeams are, or his companionable star, the evening pre-roams opes anew its delicate blossoms to the dew, and hermit-like, shunning the light, wastes its fair bloom upon the night, who blindfold to its fond caresses knows not the beauty it possesses. Thus it blooms on while night is by, when day looks out with open eye, bashed at the gaze it cannot shun, it fades and withers and is gone. Two beautiful poems by John Clare. Thank you very much for listening, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye.